being here today and making this debate possible. Today I am arguing for the affirmation in the resolution, the United States federal government should permit construction of the Keystone XL Pipeline. Now I'd like to define some terms in this debate. The U.S. federal government is the United States federal government. That's a tautological statement, but we all know what it is. To permit is to allow. Construction means the act of building. And the Keystone XL Pipeline, in this case, is phase 4 of the Keystone XL Pipeline because the 3 other phases have either already been built or, in the case of phase 3, have been approved to be built. Now, first, some background on the Keystone XL Pipeline. It was originally planned in 4 phases. Phases 1 and 2 have already been built. Phase 3 has already been approved. Now, phases 2 and 3 run from Steel City in America to various other places in America. Phase 1 runs from the town of Hardisty in Canada to Steel City in America, but it does it in a very roundabout way that's not quite as efficient as it could be. Phase 4, the single phase that hasn't been approved, would run from Hardisty to Steel City in a much straighter line. So our plan is to allow phase 4 of the Keystone XL Pipeline to be built on the condition that as soon as TransCanada finishes building it and it is ready for operation, they cease operation of phase 1 of the pipeline, as those phases together are redundant. Now I have 3 contentions, reasons why you, judges, and the audience should vote for the affirmation in today's debate. Oh, sorry. The standard for today's debate should be net benefits. And because I forgot some other things, there's no funding necessary because the government isn't spending any money on this plan. It's TransCanada that is spending all the money to build this. The timeline, we should allow this immediately. It will be built when TransCanada builds it, which will probably be soon because it's going to make them a ton of money. And the standard is net benefits because that's a very encompassing standard that is fair in just about every debate. Now I have 3 contentions, or 3 advantages rather to this plan. The first advantage is that of the length of the pipeline. Currently, the pipeline is much longer than it needs to be. Phase 1 runs from Hardisty to Steel City in sort of the shape of a right angle, which is entirely unnecessary. Phase 4 would run in something much closer to a straight line, which would cut the length of the pipeline, allow oil to be transported more efficiently. And what that means is that there's a smaller length of pipeline for which there's a potential for leaks. So although this seems slightly counterintuitive, by building more pipeline, they're actually going to reduce the risk of leaks because the amount of pipeline in use will be smaller, and on that smaller length of pipeline, there will of course be a smaller chance for any of the pipeline to burst and cause leaks and any sorts of terrible environmental problems that could result from such an oil pipeline. And obviously, environmental problems are bad for America as a whole. They reduce the quality of our environment, which reduces our ability to produce food, which reduces people's ability to eat. They reduce the quality of habitats for animals, which is bad for people who like animals, and is bad for the animals themselves because we didn't necessarily say net benefits for humans. Now, on to my second contention, which is that currently Canada sells a lot of oil to Asia. Now, what the plan does is it makes it much easier for Canada to transport oil to the United States. This gives them more of an incentive to sell to the United States rather than to countries in Asia. And what that means is that Canada will be more likely to sell oil to the United States rather than to countries in Asia. Now, this is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, it means that Canada won't need to send oil tankers to various countries in Asia to sell oil, which reduces the likeliness of oil spills from those oil tankers that would be disastrous to the environment. And second, it allows us to get more oil from Canada, which is a cheaper and more reliable source for us than the Middle East. We've never had any conflicts with Canada, whereas in the Middle East that's a little bit shakier. So by enacting this plan, we can allow cheaper costs of living for all Americans because the cheaper cost of oil will create cheaper gasoline prices because oil is used to produce gasoline. Yes, I'm going very explicitly through all of these links. And that will make lives easier for all Americans and for Canadians as they're selling more oil to Canada and their GDP improves. from that. Now, my third contention is the issue of jobs. Currently, unemployment in the United States is at a rate of 7.4%. Now, while this isn't terrible, it could be better. What the pipeline will do, according to the National Energy Committee, I believe, is it will create 20,000 direct jobs in the construction itself, and indirectly it will create 100,000 more jobs. So obviously this is good for people, because people who are unemployed often need to buy food and other necessities, and not having those is bad. I'll take your point.
How long will it take to build the pipeline?
I'm not sure exactly, but while it's being built, we have more jobs, and once it's finished, it will still require people to operate it, and those will also be jobs. Regardless of how long it takes to build, the construction itself is still a benefit. So I'm going to go quickly over those reasons. The first reason, by allowing this phase, we're shortening the total length of the pipeline, which allows more efficient transfer and is better for the environment because there's a lower chance of problems. Second, it creates a better incentive for Canada to sell oil to Asia rather than to us, or sorry, for Canada to sell oil to us rather than to countries in Asia, which will allow for cheaper oil with the United States, an increase in GDP in Canada because they'll still make more profit on it because it's cheaper to transport, and will be better for the environment because oil tankers become less necessary. And third, the pipeline will create jobs for Americans. So for all those reasons, I urge a very strong vote for the affirmation in today's debate.
So just before I start, I would like to. You okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Just before I start, I would like to thank everyone for being here. I would like to thank Shay for letting us use her timer, and our amazing supporters right here. They're our best guys over here, and all of the audience as well as the judge and everyone. Just so now I'm gonna start. Okay. Thank you for everyone being here, because without all of you guys, this debate would not be possible. The resolution today is the U.S. federal government should permit construction of the Keystone XL Pipeline. And we agree with all of their definitions, except with the fact that they did not very much specify exactly what net benefits we would be measuring on. They just said net benefits. They never said to what or to who or even to anything. They just said net benefits in general. So we're going to assume that it is net benefits to the social contract. So net benefits to the social contract. Now their plan of allowing phase 4 of the Keystone XL pipeline to go through, that it would be constructing this more direct route for the Keystone XL pipeline. Now I'm going to start off by going into our contentions and disadvantages, and then I'm going to go into their case and why they have not proven to any of us here why they actually have any advantages for their plan. Now, to start off, the Keystone XL pipeline would not decrease foreign oil dependency. It would not decrease foreign oil dependency because, as TransCanada has already stated multiple times, the oil will still be sold abroad because of the better prices. Despite what the affirmative is trying to say is that it will be sold in the United States, TransCanada has stated, as well as many reports from many veritable news sources, as well as Fox News and CNN, have stated that... Oh, that came out wrong. Including Fox News and CNN, that the oil will still be sold abroad to China and Europe, as well as many other nations. It will not... Can I please have some quiet, please? Decrease foreign oil dependency. Again, it will actually raise oil prices in the United States. Because one of the things that they failed to tell you about phase 4 of this plan is that it includes the draining of the oil reserves in the Midwest that Canada currently has stored there. Those oil reserves are being used to mitigate the oil price fluctuations that are currently happening in the United States. In this plan that they propose, those would be drained and be allowed by TransCanada to be sold overseas. That would make it so we can no longer mitigate the effects of fluctuating oil prices. Therefore, these prices would rise, and it would cost more for the American citizens. Net benefits of the social contract. It is the duty of the US federal government to protect its people. It is a net detriment of the affirmative team to put in this plan because it will raise oil prices and therefore make it harder on the US citizen. Move on to our second point, is that this will harm the environment and directs directly to the net benefits to the social contract. Because right now, the United States citizens live in the United States. We want the environment to be good. We want the land to be fertile and not polluted. In the past year alone, the current pipelines that they have in place have leaked 12 times, just in the past year. Building this new pipeline will not change anything on their construction. Yes, I will take your point.
How large were those leaks?
It does not really matter how large the leaks are, because an oil leak is an oil leak because it is polluting the area and allowing for people to not farm the land as well as they could without these oil leaks, regardless of the size of it. Now, to move on. Again, this plan would include the mining of the Canada oil tar sands. The Canada tar sands are the second largest deposit of carbon dioxide in the world. Mining these tar sands would release all of this tar sand, all of this carbon dioxide, and actually decrease the level of the environment and increase global warming. Yes, I'll take your point.
Our plan was about construction of a pipe. Where did we say anything about the mining of tar sands?
You said phase 4 of the Keystone XL Pipeline plan. Therefore, in that plan, it states mining of these tar sands as well as the oil reserves. Yes, I will take your point.
We stated phase 4 of construction, not of the plan.
In phase 4 of the construction, it states this. Now, I'm going to move on to your contentions. First, that the length of the pipeline will be more efficient for transportation of oil, and that it will help the environment because there's less room for oil spills. But these oil spills will still be happening and hurting the American people. So this is a disadvantage to net benefits of the social contract, because the US federal government will actually be hurting its own people, and that is against the social contract. Now, to move on. Again, they will be mining these tar sands. So how is it benefiting the environment to mine these tar sands even more and release all of this carbon dioxide? How is it beneficial to add another pipeline that can leak even more? They have not stated that the first 2 pipelines will be disappearing and that they will not be used at all for oil. They can leak, the current ones can leak, and all it will do would create a worse environmental situation. Their second contention is that Canada sells a lot of its oil to Asia, in fact almost all of it, and that now suddenly, because they have an easier method to transport through the United States, they will just start selling to the United States. But in fact, I already refuted this in our first contention, in that the Keystone XL Pipeline will not actually allow Canada to sell oil to the United States, because it is said multiple times, they will still sell just as much, if not even more, to other nations. And this will not be seen in the United States. In fact, this building of this pipeline will actually make oil prices go up and hurt the United States. So these first 2 contentions they have had, these supposed advantages, already are disadvantages. Now, their third point was of job creation. They have not specified how long these jobs will be in place. They have just thrown out this number of 20,000 new jobs. Now, we have found in our research that while maybe these 20,000 new jobs may be very, very temporary on the construction, it actually only creates 35 permanent jobs. That is it. 35 permanent jobs trading off with all of the environmental and economic concerns. I don't think that's a viable advantage at all. Only 35 permanent jobs. Until, of course, there's an oil spill, then, of course, they get all the jobs that they want to clean up this environmental mess. Now, to move on, again, 1, Keystone XL Pipeline will not decrease dependency on foreign oil. Therefore, due to the judging criteria of net benefits, it is a disadvantage to the social contract. as well as it will hurt the environment even more and hurt the place where Americans live in, and all of their contentions have actually been disadvantages to the social contract, and that's why I urge a strong vote in the negation.
Judges ready? Opponents ready?
Ready.
Everybody else? Alright, I will begin. Hello, my name is Hannah Waller, and I am the second speaker for the affirmation on the motion that the U.S. federal government should permit construction of the Keystone XL Pipeline. So, a little bit of background information before I dive into my speech and begin. 3/4 of this pipeline has already been built, and the route that is in use right now is very long, and it's not a direct course to the end result of where the oil is going. So what Phase 4 does is it makes the route more direct. So our plan text is as follows. The U.S. federal government will allow Phase 4 of the pipeline to be built and for Phase 1 to stop being used. So already they were trying to state that we would implement it's protected time. We were trying to implement the use of Phase 4 and Phase 1. However, explicitly in our plan text, before we started anything, we stated that we would stop the use of Phase 1 and only continue the use of Phase 4. So our first point, they did not address at all, so you can flow that right across, Judge. However, I will be going into it and further fleshing it out. So our first point is that it is better for the environment. So the line is shorter when we implement Phase 4. So there's less chance of any potential leakage. And therefore, by the weighing of net benefits, we are doing more good than harm. Yes.
What about Phase 2? Will that still be used?
No. Thank you. Phase 2 and Phase 1 were part of the same phase. So they were kind of like developed under the same phase and are used in coherence with each other, because if you use Phase 2 solely, then the oil will reach no destination, because without Phase 1 of the pipe, it's just like the middle of the pipe and it doesn't connect to any oil source. So that's completely illogical. So no, it will not be used. Also, as I was saying, the line is shorter, so there's less chance of leakage, and thus it does less damage to the environment. Otherwise, the oil would be shipped from Canada to Asia. So the oil is still burned and still has the potential for leakage, except when it's shipped to Canada, the potential for leakage is even worse, and it's over a larger stretch of ocean, so therefore it would be even larger of a problem if it leaked in the middle of the ocean. It would be incredibly messy cleanup, even worse than if it were to leak on land. And as I stated, there were 12 leaks in the past year. However, I'd like to point out that the size of these leaks does matter, because the leaks were a maximum of 3 inches. So they were easy cleanup. These leaks were not a huge disaster. Nobody's livelihood was ruined. The oil was easily cleaned up. The oil was easily fixed. Yes.
I didn't know oil was measured in inches.
The ground spill and the ground that it covered was 3 inches. It went 3 inches down into the soil. Yes.
So you're telling me 3 inches laid out across miles is not ruining someone's livelihood?
Thank you. I'd like to point out that this pipeline is not like in the middle of a city. It's not like this is running through a major city. This is in the middle of the country, so I mean, there's not really anyone that lives around it. No, thank you. Also, I would like to bring up the fact that as part of Phase 4 being built, the new modification to Phase 4 of the pipeline, as stated by as stated by some organization having to do with the pipeline, is that the new Keystone XL Pipeline Phase 4 will continuously monitor sensors that register pressure and leak issues. So valves are spaced along the pipeline and are closed from remote centers to limit leaks. So this Phase 4 was not part of the pipeline, and therefore by building Phase 4, we're reducing the chances of leaks. So Phase 4 is good. our second contention is that it's a cheaper, more reliable source than the Middle East. Now, we never said that we were going to reduce our dependency on it. We just said that it's cheaper and more reliable, so there goes net benefits. Also, our third contention is jobs. So, according to the Energy and Commerce Committee, that's what I wanted for the last one. Okay, there it is. The Energy and Commerce Committee, 20,000 direct jobs will be implemented. As they stated 35, I don't know where they got their numbers. I have a source, Energy and Commerce Committee, 20,000 direct jobs and 100,000 indirect jobs, plus the countless jobs that will be required to build this phase of the pipeline. There are your jobs. Also, currently with a 7.4% unemployment rate, we need all the jobs we can get. So to continue on to something that I feel as though I have the burden to address, their weighing mechanism argument. So they try to redefine the weighing mechanism as net benefits to the social contract. However, it doesn't seem logical that we would define it as that, so I don't know why you guys assume that. And also, it's not our burden to limit the weighing mechanism further than net benefits. Net benefits is a weighing mechanism on its own, and it's not our burden to limit it. And we defined it broadly for the benefit of both teams so that we would both have equal ground to argue. Yes?
Net benefits to what?
Thank you. Net benefits is the greater good. Net benefits states that you must show that it does more good than harm. Not just to a particular amount of people. Net benefits is doing more good to more people. So that's kind of a common usage anyways, and we don't need, it's not our burden to further define it. So we're going to leave it at that. So I've already kind of gone through refuting their points with mine. However, I'll go over just to point stamp them so you know where I am on the flow. So their second point was that there were 12 leaks this year alone, and I was like, that's why we're trying to build phase 4, to prevent leaks and stuff, because obviously there's maximum security on this one, and they're implementing pressure and leak valves and sensors. So that's why we're building phase 4. Also, phase 4 goes across less land, so there's less risk of leaks due to the new plans. And their third contention was that the price of oil will go up. However, due to the laws of supply and demand, by pumping more oil, does it seem logical that prices are going to go up? I don't think so. It seems logical that prices will go down because there is more oil. So those are all their contentions that they gave me to refute. I have gone through my speech, so I will be giving you an our world, their world scenario. In our world, we plan to implement stage 4 of the pipeline. By implementing stage 4 of this pipeline, we are going to be, it will be better for the environment, there will be less potential leakage over a shorter distance, it's going to be a cheaper, more reliable source in the Middle East for oil, and we will be creating countless jobs. Now in their world, they're trying to tell you that it doesn't matter that it's better for the environment, we shouldn't do it. Even though it's cheaper and more reliable than the Middle East, we shouldn't do it. And they're telling you that these jobs don't matter, when in fact they really do. So thank you, please, I strongly urge you to place your vote for the affirmation ballot.
All right, everybody ready? Everybody
Ready for the...
All right, I'm starting time now. I'd like to thank my partner for coming, all my esteemed fans, my opposition, and the two beautiful judges. I'm going to start today by going through their points, how we rebutted them, and then their rebuttals to our rebuttals. Neither of which made sense. Honestly, they started by saying their first point was that shortening this oil line will help with transportation of oil. But what they failed, this is actually true, yes, shortening a pipeline would theoretically make oil go somewhere faster. What they failed to mention is that in this shortening, they go through something called the Canadian tar sands. Okay, and what this does is, I'll explain what that does when I go to my second contention. Constructing the Keystone XL Pipeline will force us to mine these Canadian tar sands. And as my accomplice stated earlier, the Canadian tar sands are the second largest carbon reserve in the entire world. Mining this would release all of that carbon into the air. Also, the construction of this phase 4 would actually require cutting down 740,000, not right now, 740,000 acres of the boreal forest, which would indirectly, if anybody cares, cause the woodland caribou to go extinct. Also, they asked earlier in a POI how much pollution has happened so far. Well, tar sands, just if you're wondering, tar sands oil production has already created more than 50 square miles of toxic waste ponds, which are actually visible from space. So, moving on to their next contention, they said that Canada sells a lot of oil to Asia, and that this would cause, apparently, us to get more oil. But, as my accomplice said earlier, oil will still be sold abroad. He mentioned how the Keystone XL Pipeline will increase domestic oil prices into the short and long term. Canadian oil reserves stored in the Midwest help suppress gas and oil prices in the United States. As simple as that. But TransCanada, the company doing this, put out a statement saying that the Keystone oil, not right now, Keystone would allow these reserves to be drained, and gas prices would not only hike immediately, but then continually grow as we continue to export our oil. Their third contention, the most ridiculous one, is that it will create 20,000, 100,000 jobs. They're throwing out numbers like this. But a website called EcoWatch, EcoWatch.com, put out a statement that these pipelines actually, after, yes, sure, 20,000 jobs will be created for the however long this time that they've not actually stated how long it takes to construct this. But for that time, yes, they'll have jobs. But then all of those jobs will be immediately lost after this is built, as these pipelines take very little maintenance to maintain, unless, of course, there is an oil spill. But after the actual construction, 35 jobs will be created permanently. And these are high-ranking jobs, but there are only 35 of them. All of them are 35. Now I'm going to move on to some of my points. Yes?
Can I ask for your source on that?
Yes, ecowatch.com. Search it. I'm going to start. Please sit down. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my contentions. To back what my colleague said earlier, this pipeline will completely and totally devastate the economy that is already being destroyed by parts 1, 2, and 3. And the opponents seem to believe that these leaks were small and they were in the middle of nowhere. Because they're not in the middle of the city, they must not hurt anybody, right? Well, actually, farmland is being destroyed by these, and the water supply, as these oil seep-ins that don't seem much, to maybe someone from a city or from a suburban area, they actually ruin the water supply for farmers' homes, farmers' families, and farmers' crops. And farmers cannot afford that. No matter how small it is, that is direct money being taken from American farmers. And then there was some type of, next the opponents went on to say that there was some type of dispute about net benefits to the greater good, and this is very vague, and I don't know if they're trying to draw some type of topicality argument on this, but honestly, net benefits to the greater good, what does this even suggest? Is God going to build this pipeline and approve it? No, this is about the American people, because that is who this is directly affecting, as we said earlier. Finally, I'm going to just reiterate what my colleague said earlier about harming the economy. And the opponents point to the laws of supply and demand. They haven't stated what any of these are. No, thank you. Any of these are, or how they actually will affect this. They just asked a question. They posed the question, oh, wouldn't this happen, wouldn't this? There was no actual solution presented here. And then they offered you an our world and their world situation. And I'm going to do something similar. In our world, Phase 4 is not completed. The boreal forest stays 740,000 acres larger. The woodland caribou is not extinct. Mining the tar sands does not happen, and carbon is not released into the atmosphere from the second largest carbon deposit in the entire world. These 35 jobs are not created. Oh, darn. And then, oil prices do not hike. Oil, and then in conjunction with that, gas prices do not hike immediately and then continue to steadily rise as we continue to export this oil that we have now drained from from Midwestern oil deposits that we've used so far and thus far to regulate gas prices. And finally, these 50 square mile toxic ponds visible from space continue to grow, and we see no actual economic benefits from this. The opponents have proposed things that honestly hold no ground because they haven't actually given any numbers or any type of proof for this. So this is why you should consider the negative side, and that the U.S. federal government should not permit the construction of the Keystone XL Pipeline. Thank you.
Actually, no,
This is all facts on facts on facts.
Okay. Wait. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Is everyone ready? Yes? Great. Now, as the last negation speaker, I would just like to start off by thanking everyone for being here, because without all of you guys, this debate would not be possible. Now, again, the resolution is the U.S. federal government should permit construction of the Keystone XL Pipeline. Their plan is to allow the building of Phase 4 and the implement of Phase 4. Now, just a brief roadmap. I'm going to go over voting issues and why we have clearly won this debate, and why we've clearly shown you why not only does this give no advantages, no net benefits, it actually gives disadvantages to the social contract and to net benefits worldwide. We could go with our definition, or we could go with their definition. We would still win this debate. Now, to start off, our first voting issue is the disadvantage and the hurting of the environment. The building of this Keystone XL pipeline would just create more and more damage to the environment. As my partner said, and as I said in my first speech, this would require the mining of the tar sands that are the second largest carbon deposit in the world. This is releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, increasing global warming, and hurting the environment even more. We are already having issues with global warming. We are already trying to solve it. All this would be doing is making things worse. Again, disadvantage to the environment. Net benefits. All this would do hurt more farmlands. Like we said, this is going straight through farmlands. They said because it's not in a city, it doesn't matter. It's in the middle of nowhere. No one lives out in the country. Well, interestingly enough, out in the country where no one lives is actually where all of our food in the United States is grown. That is where we are growing. That is where the most pollution would ever happen. The water supply, their agricultural land, 3 inches of oil all over your ag land sure does mess up your livelihood, but apparently 3 inches isn't enough to worry about because no one lives out there, right? No, because that is what we need to be worried about. Disadvantages to the environment, and that is what they are proposing today, hurting the environment even more than this current system that we have in place. Now, our second voting issue is the disadvantage to the economy. They try to propose, through some weird question that they never impacted, gave any links, gave any reasons to, that because of some law of supply and demand that they just threw out there, they just said, oh, supply and demand, oh, oil prices go down. Okay, what does that mean at all? They gave no links, no structure to that. They just said the word supply and demand and hope that you go for it. Whereas we have shown you that building this Phase 4 and implementing the tactics that they are going to use in Phase 4, such as draining the oil reserves in the Midwest that we are using to mitigate oil fluctuations in price, is actually going to hurt the economy. So all these things that they supposedly call as an economic advantage actually hurts the economy even more, because oil prices go up, the American people have to spend more on gas, which means that there's less money in their pockets, which means that they can use less of that in promoting our economy. They can use less of this in circulating this capital, this money, throughout our nation's economy. Also, they claim that we can start selling it more in the United States because because the Middle East is more expensive and Canada is a cheaper option. Whereas they never even stated why, if we're a cheaper option, if Canada's a cheaper option, why wouldn't Canada go sell it to these other nations? they don't give any links to why this is actually cheaper and why this would actually happen. They just state, oh, more oil in the United States means less gas prices. They don't give any links, no background to it, therefore they should be access to no impacts, which, interestingly enough, they haven't even given any impact as to why this is good. Whereas we have shown you that this would not help the economy, this would hurt the economy, and it would not decrease our dependency on foreign oil, and it would not give us any more oil, because TransCanada has stated in many public announcements that they will not stop selling this oil to countries abroad. Now, our third is just a recap of pretty much everything that's gone on in this debate. It's a disadvantage to the human species. It's a disadvantage to America. It's a disadvantage to everyone who would even be closely affected by this billing. All it would do is hurt the environment, hurt the economy. Maybe it creates 20,000 jobs for some period of time that they haven't specified. They haven't specified what field these jobs would be in. They may be low-paying jobs just in the construction. We don't know. They haven't specified anything. All they have said is that it will create jobs. Whereas we have shown that it's detrimental to the economy, detrimental to the environment, and detrimental to the social contract, to everything that the American government stands for. And this is why you have to vote in the negation on your ballot for this debate, Judge. Thank you.
Everyone ready? And thank you all once again for helping to make this debate possible today. So I'm going to begin this speech by giving you some voting issues as to why the affirmation has won today's debate. But first I'd like to begin with a quick note about our framework. Now, our framework for this debate has been net benefits. Our opponents tried to make it into net benefits to the social contract, but A, they have yet to link any of their arguments to the social contract at all, and B, in their first speech they talked about the social contract, and in the second speech they talked about American values. So that's a moving goalpost, and I think that we really ought to just stick with net benefits in general, since that seems to be what we're actually using in today's debate. So now, to get into my voting issues, which happen to be the same as theirs, but our arguments are much better, as you will soon see. Now, the first voting issue is the environment. Simply put, in our world, there are fewer oil spills. In their world, there are more oil spills. This is because the pipeline will be shorter, which means that there will be less opportunity for oil spills. Now, they've been going on and on about how terrible oil spills are, but if oil spills are terrible, then you should go with our plan, because there will be fewer spills because the pipeline will be shorter. Furthermore, as my partner mentioned earlier, the new Keystone XL Pipeline will continuously monitor sensors that register pressure and leak issues. And valves are spaced out so that they can be closed from remote centers to limit leaks. So not only will this pipeline be shorter to limit leaks, it will also have better technology than the current pipeline in place, which will also limit leaks. So that is clearly in our favor. They mentioned the tar sands, mining in the tar sands, but the thing is that the tar sands are in Canada. And phases 1 and phases 4 on the map of the pipeline don't diverge until they reach the United States. So if phase 4 goes through the tar sands in Canada, then so does phase 1. So that doesn't actually change anything. The only difference is that in our world, the oil comes to us because the pipeline is into America. My opponent even agreed that having a pipeline into America will improve the efficiency of getting oil into America and thus bring more oil into America. And whereas in their world, the oil won't be able to get to America as easily and thus will go to Asia, which is not something that we want for our economy. They mentioned the forests, but these pipes aren't actually very wide. It's not like we're going to be cutting down entire forests to make room for this pipe. They're actually relatively narrow, so the deforestation impact would be small at best, or at worst. They mentioned the water supply, but there are already thousands of miles of pipelines in the United States, and they operate with minimum safety problems, including the one above the Oglala Aquifer, which has been completely unaffected. So if those oil pipelines aren't affecting the water supply, I don't see why this one, which has higher safety standards.
Point of order, this is a new argument. They didn't bring this up in any of their constructive speeches. Therefore, they're not giving us a chance to respond.
Well, it's a refutation to a point that you made for the first time in one of your speeches in your second constructive speech, so this is our first chance to respond to it. May I continue? Okay. So now, our second voting issue is the economy. Now, pertaining to jobs. our source for the number of jobs, which is 20,000 direct jobs and 100,000 indirect jobs, these are permanent jobs, by the way, is coming from the Energy and Commerce Committee, whereas their source of 35 jobs is a website that they found. I think you can all agree that our source is better for that when they say that there's 20,000 direct jobs coming. So clearly that's going to benefit us. Also the idea of cheaper oil, they say that some law of supply and demand means that we're going to have cheaper oil. Supply and demand is not just some law. It is one of the most fundamental laws to the workings of the economy, and if you don't understand that by now, I think that you need to go take an economy class. Now, like my opponent agreed with us that this pipeline would make it more efficient to get more oil into the United States. That will increase the supply, which will make the price go down, which again, lower oil prices are better for us. So in summary, if you look at what our world will look like if we go with our plan, there will be fewer oil spills, the water will be better off because there will be fewer leaks into the water, the issues of the tar sands and the oil sources in the forest don't really change very much because they're being affected now as much as they were in their plan. The oil is not getting sent to Asia, it's getting sent to us, which will help our economy and our energy crisis. We will have more jobs and we will have cheaper oil. Whereas in their world, there are more oil spills, which will be hurting the environment more. The water will be worse. The oil will be more expensive. And to top it all off, there will be fewer jobs in the United States economy. So if you care about the environment and our economy, then I urge you to please vote for the affirmation.